Good day for those of you that are viewing this via Facebook. We will get started shortly. As soon as I get the signal from LinkedIn Live that we are live, I will begin. So please bear with us while we get this link together. If you should have any questions during the time that our guest speaker is speaking tonight, please put them in the chat so that we can actually go ahead and ask you those questions. And we can actually have Bianca answer those questions at the end. When she's done speaking, we'll be actually able to go ahead and get that started. Put them in the chat so that we can actually go ahead and ask you those questions. So I am going to go ahead and get started because I do have signal from StreamYard indicating that we are now live on both Facebook as well as LinkedIn, and we're also streaming to YouTube. Once again, as I say every day, should you need this, want to have a copy of this link because you want to look at it your time, or you want to share it with your community, your followers, your organization, you want to get the information out, please send me a message through LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Send me a message and say, hey, Sandra, can I have a link to whatever show it is that you need to look at? So with that being said, what I'm going to go ahead and do is begin to give you a little bit of information regarding our speaker tonight. Give me just 1 second. Regarding our speaker tonight. Okay, so tonight we have the topic that we're focusing in on the first annual, because this is going to be an annual event, the first annual C.H.L.M.S Medi-Helpz Foundation Black Health History, right? It is Black history, but as Carter G. Woodson raised that question, how come it's not Black in history? And so I'm asking the question, especially in today's day and age when we have so many of our community members and patients and families of patients who are needlessly suffering through some of the most difficult challenges and times that there are with healthcare. Why can't we say that it's Black Health History Month? Because we have a number of special senior subject matter experts that give of their time freely because they see what I see in the vision and mission that C.H.L.M.S sees, is that we need to build up our community where we have educated, empowered, and engaged community. We really do. And as I often say, no one's come to save us. We have to save our own. So guess what, you guys, everyone, you now have access to a panel of senior subject matter experts that are more than willing and ready and able to help you with whatever situation you may have, because you no longer need to sit. We've sat too long without saying anything. We've sat too long in health disparities, waiting for someone to fix it. Well, guess what? If we ain't figured it out yet, we need to figure it out now. No one's coming to save us. It's going to take a community of all, especially as healthcare professionals that have the knowledge and have been bestowed the gifts we have. We didn't get those gifts for us to keep them to ourselves. We got those gifts so that we could share them. And we're coming together saying, look, we're here. You have resources. Don't you ever let anybody else tell you that you have no resources, no options. It's a falsehood, and you really shouldn't believe it. And if you do believe it, it not only hurts you as a patient suffering a health challenge, it hurts your family and your community. So know that you have help. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mrs. Bianca Dickerson-Williams. Guess what, y'all? She ain't the average Bianca on the street. She has her Juris Doctorate. So as I have said from day one, I'm not playing when it comes down to the health of our community. I have my board members and everyone involved with C.H.L.M.S knows Sandra takes it seriously when it comes to the passion that she has for protecting her community. And so we know that she's putting something together. She might not be able to get them all, but she's going to ask some of the best experts that she can to deliver the information to the patients because they need to have this information delivered. So Bianca holds a Juris Doctorate degree from Western Michigan University, Thomas M. Cooley Law School, and is certified in electronic evidence discovery. I'm gonna let her tell y'all a little later what that is because I don't even know what that is. So I don't even know what that is. She has spent her career in the legal profession providing consultative subject matter expertise to clients and companies, law firms, and government agencies involved in controlling and mitigating risk, as well as a variety of legal disputes and investigations. What Bianca never imagined, which is what a lot of us in the healthcare community, a lot of us senior subject matter experts in the healthcare community, what we never imagined was that those very patients that we fight for, that we would be one of those patients. And most of us that are in the social service aspect of healthcare, we're there, one, because we know our community needs help. We've studied it, we've seen it, we've watched it from afar. All our books, all our books that we've had to look at, whether it was our undergrad, our grad, or our doctorate, all of our books tell us these stories, and we go, oh my God, this really happened, and we don't believe it until it happens to us. I'm one of those patients that I didn't believe it would ever happen to me, but here I am going through some health challenges myself. And so not only am I studying it, but I am it. And Bianca is the same way. She is it. What Bianca never imagined is that one day she would be waging her own fight for justice, publicly discussing her traumatic experience in the delivery room and a healthcare system that is stacked against, once again, y'all, they ain't coming to save us. They are not coming to save us. And we don't save ourselves and band together and collaborate and saving ourselves, we ain't going to be saved, right? We're going to continue to be the statistic on TV that they talk about when they say they didn't make it. They didn't make it. Why they didn't make it? Well, could you tell me why? Right? So it's important for us to be together, stacked against African Americans and Indigenous mothers. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Bianca. But before I do, Bianca, from my heart and from the heart of all of us that serve on the C.H.L.M.S Medi-Helpz Foundation, we say thank you so much for giving up your time, freely giving up your time and coming to share some information that we all need to know. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to do what I often do. I always do, actually. Whenever I have a speaker on, I sit back and I become that patient that gets that education. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sandra. I first want to thank you for allowing me this platform to talk about such an important topic. And I always enjoy collaborating with other foundations, other nonprofits, and other advocates in our communities that are looking to bring about change regarding things that are impacting us and our families. The first thing that I want to start with is giving you a little bit more information on my background. As Sandra mentioned, I've been in the legal profession for 20 years. I've enjoyed working in the legal community. And as she stated, I never thought, though, that I would be utilizing my own educational background, contacts, and knowledge to go up against, a massive giant like a hospital to get justice for myself and for my family. It's just not something that, we ever, plan for. No one raises their hand and says, hey, I want to be involved in a lawsuit, but it happened and we're here. And the purpose of this meeting today is to give you my story, statistics to help you stay more informed, as well as explaining the connection with our legal community, with our medical community, and how those two things interplay with one another so that you can be better prepared in your health decisions and in your health choices. So I want to start with some statistics. The U.S. Center for Disease Control, as well as the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, have regularly reported that African American women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die or be injured in childbirth than any other race in our country. And when I first heard that statistic, as you can imagine, I was very alarmed because we've been taught and trained as Americans that our country is the best, that we have the greatest access to, healthcare resources. We're on the cutting edge of technology. We're well informed. We have the financial backing to get the proper healthcare that we need and that we deserve. However, you hear these statistics, and then we all have to look at that reality and say, okay, well, there's a disconnect here. There's a gap here. How is it that, we're the country of choice for everyone, but at the same token, we have these statistics that compare actually to third world countries. So our statistics, when you look at modernized countries, we are actually at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to maternal health care. And how do you explain that? We're not a third world country. We have plenty of resources, yet those are our statistics. The next area of statistics I'd like to share is following Black women or African American women is Indigenous women. They are the next category. And that shouldn't be very surprising because when you look at our Black and Brown communities, we are typically the ones that are most often incarcerated, most often getting financial assistance from the government, or we're being tagged as having poor health choices. What I mean by that, for instance, is diet, being accused of, things like diabetes, that's our fault. We're bringing that upon ourselves. So the same sort of statistics that you see in other institutions, such as our criminal justice institution, with African American men being pulled over and assaulted for minor offenses like, oh, you had a broken tail light, I'm pulling you over, and then somehow you wind up deceased in the front seat. When we look at all of those different institutions, the healthcare institution is no different. And I think that what we need to do as a community is start analyzing and looking at our healthcare system the same way we've looked at other forms of systemic racism, judicial bias, implicit bias, racism, whatever word you feel is most fitting in those situations. Because as I've embarked upon this journey personally, one of the things that has stood out to me the most is this notion that, well, if you go to college, you have a good healthcare insurance, and you have access to good healthcare and a good hospital and good doctors, you're not going to become a statistic. And I'm here to tell you as a living witness, that is simply not the case. So I'm going to start with my story, and then I'm going to tie this all together for you all in a really nice bow. I went in on May the 5th of 2015 to give birth to my second child. I'd had a normal pregnancy. There were no complications. I was taking all of my prenatal care vitamins, and everything had gone completely smooth. Given that this was my second child, I felt really confident in knowing what to expect and what to look out for, and just really preparing myself and my family, for the birth of another child. When I arrived at the hospital to give birth, I went under an epidural, which is essentially numbing the body so that you do not feel pain and contractions during the delivery process. I had checked into the hospital in the morning, and later that night, roughly 10 to 12 hours later, another nurse came in and said, "Hey, I noticed that you're not having proper contractions." And she happened to check the Pitocin valve. For those of you that do not know what Pitocin is, it is a drug that is used to induce labor, to assist in the laboring process. And when she mentioned this to my husband and I, she said, "I'm going to reach out to your doctor to see if we can have a C-section." She leaves the room. My husband and I began taking pictures of everything that was in the room. I work in the legal space, so does my husband. So at this point now, I'm beginning to think, okay, she's alerting me of something that I would deem as a complication or something that is potentially negligent. Keeping my fingers crossed, this is still going to be a smooth process and we're going to be okay. She then later comes back and says, "Your doctor does not want to do a C-section. We're going to proceed with a traditional vaginal birth." And my husband and I said, okay. And she said, what I am going to do is increase the Pitocin at the instruction of the physician. So she increases the Pitocin. Within a very, very short window of time, I went from being about 2 centimeters dilated to being fully crowned. And I don't know how many listeners that we have on that are male versus female, but essentially that is the baby's not ready to come to the baby is not only is it ready to come, it's here. So that is the difference between 2 centimeters versus being fully crowned. When that occurred, I was told not to push, and the doctor was not yet at the hospital. I was waiting for the doctor, and I was told and instructed by the nurse not to push. So we waited. About 30 minutes later, the doctor showed up. She comes running in. She grabs a stool. She comes in between my legs, and she tells me to get my legs up into position to give birth. I was completely numb from the waist down. I had no feeling whatsoever. And she instructed the nurse to get my legs into the birthing position, meaning slightly tilted back, flexed at the knees, and open. And when that occurred, the nurse was on the left side of my body holding up my left leg. I pushed one time. And as we were preparing to push again, the nurse had inadvertently looked away. And when she did, she dropped my leg. She had let go of my leg. So now my baby is, coming out. And at this point, I'm not feeling anything because I'm under this epidural. Again, I'm under this drug that numbs the body from the waist down. So I could see what was happening, but I could not feel what was happening. So to me, as a layperson, it wasn't even registering that there was a complication because I felt no pain. At that particular time, the nurse then realized, after the doctor yelled at her, that the leg had been down. She put the leg back up. I then gave birth, and my daughter was whisked away. I never was able to hold my daughter while I was in the delivery room. So that was the first indication to me of something alarming is happening, because when I had delivered my first child, immediately after she was born, she was placed into my arms for that maternal bonding. And my daughter's taken away. My husband goes with my daughter to make sure that she's okay. And I lay in that position for about 2 hours post-delivery. And I knew that, again, having given birth before, that this was a significant amount of time. So I began asking questions to the nurse and the doctor. Is everything okay? Is everything okay? And I was told that everything was just fine. And it was just, procedure, typical procedure. I then went to the postpartum wing, where I was given numerous narcotics that were not known to me at the time. I was also being instructed to breastfeed my daughter, which I still can't resolve to this day, how you could give me lethal narcotics such as Pitocin, Oxycontin, Toradol, Percocet, and then instruct me to breastfeed my child. Had I known that I was being given those narcotics, I would have never taken on the notion of breastfeeding my child, because I would not have wanted that to pass to my daughter. Nonetheless, I was in excruciating pain, unexplained pain. I was asking for help. My husband was asking for help, and we were ignored, essentially. We did not receive any help for any of the complaints outside of simply giving us narcotics. The narcotics were not working. So at that point, I said, hey, is there something else that can be done here? And I, again, feeling very ignored, I began to tell them, listen, if you don't get me some help, I'm going to harm myself because the pain is so severe. At that point, I'm thinking, okay, we're good here. They're going to go get a doctor. Well, they did it. Instead, they sent a social worker and to evaluate my mental state and to ask me questions about whether or not I was prepared for my daughter's birth, if I had diapers at home, if I had a car seat ready to go. And it was completely going over their head that I was in debilitating pain. And the focus became whether or not I had proper resources at home. And I think that that was the moment for me where I began to feel, oh my goodness, they do not see me. They're stereotyping me right now in this moment. And they're more concerned with whether or not I have diapers at home and a car seat at home versus actually investigating the severity of my pain. Because once the child is born, the body starts to go back to its natural state. Postpartum depression does not start immediately after birth. I had had no prior history of mental health issues. So there was no reason to be thinking that there was something wrong with me mentally, especially when I'm complaining of physical pain. And I'm saying I'm in physical pain repeatedly, day after day during my hospital stay. So Long story short, I winded up discovering within a 3-year time frame that when my leg dropped, it caused injury to my spinal cord. And it also caused injury to my nerves that ran through my pelvis, through my legs. And it was catastrophic injuries that would need surgeries and treatment. And because of the delay in the diagnosis, it left me in a state where some of the things became permanent. And during that process of getting proper diagnoses, I was also going to different doctors' offices and requesting my medical records. And the reason why I was doing that is because I was looking for answers. And the answers should have been in my medical records, but they were not. So I winded up filing a lawsuit against the hospital. I am still going through that legal process even to this day. I guess what today is February the 9th. So February 9th, 2024, and my daughter was born May 5th of 2015. My daughter will be 9 years old in May. So I have been dealing with this for almost a decade. So it speaks to not only our medical system, but it also speaks to our legal system as well, because the same bias and the same discrimination that I experienced medically, I also then experienced legally. Now, I want to tell you that at the time of my injury, as you mentioned, Sandra, I had attained a Juris Doctor degree. I'm a lawyer by profession. I had a 6-figure income, and I had top of the line healthcare insurance through Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I lived within walking distance of the hospital where I was giving birth. And it was and still is, a very well-to-do area. So the notion that this is happening to African American women or Indigenous women that are poorly educated, don't have access to good health care for whatever reason, whether it be poverty or location or whether or not you're in a rural community, it is simply not true. It is happening to all of us, regardless of education, regardless of income, regardless of where we live, regardless of our doctors. The one slight disparity that I want to share with you is that statistically, it has been shown through the Center for Disease Control, as well as the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, that when Black and Brown people have a doctor that is of the same race as they are, their life expectancy increases. And the reason why their life expectancy increases is because when we walk in the door as a patient, they value us as another human being on the same level that they are. So while we may not be medically trained and as educated as they are in the medical profession, the value of my life when I walk into the room means something to you versus those that are not of the same race. Now, that is not to say that every non-Black doctor or every non-brown doctor is racist or biased. What it is to say, though, is that when you walk into a room for healthcare, whether it's giving birth, whether it's for a routine checkup, whether or not it's a COVID shot, whether or not it's a flu shot, whether or not they're treating you for cancer, you have to know, and please believe me when I tell you this, when you walk into that room, the first thing they see is your race. And whether they know it or realize it or not, they are making a judgment about you and how you take care of yourself. It has been statistically proven and the data is there. This, again, is not to point fingers or to accuse people of being racist. It is simply to provide you with the necessary information so that you and your family can make informed decisions as it pertains to your health. So the first thing, be informed on the educational attainments of your physician, whether or not they've ever been reported for malpractice, whether or not they've had issues with the medical board, because anytime a doctor is reported by a patient or a hospital, that goes onto their record, which is housed and managed by the medical boards. Okay. If you do a search for this, you can easily pull up this type of information. It's a part of your due diligence in selecting the right healthcare provider for yourself. The next thing, number 2, that I want everyone to take away from our time together today is please make sure that you have your medical records, an updated copy of all of your medical records. And the reason why that's so important is this, going back to my certifications in electronic evidence discovery. If it is not in your medical records, what that means legally is it didn't happen. So if you come into a doctor's office and you complain, oh my goodness, I'm having flu-like symptoms. I'm having shaking sensations. I cannot taste anything in my mouth. And I've been coughing. To a lot of people, that might sound like COVID, right? But if your doctor doesn't document in their electronic records on the computer or in their chart with writing with the pen and says, this patient presented to my office on February the 9th, 2024 with flu-like symptoms, can't have taste bud sensations are failing, and then you die the next day, guess what happens? Your family is now looking for answers. What happened? We thought that this person had a cold, but when they presented to the doctor, they complained all of these symptoms, but guess what? The doctor didn't document them. So legally, there is no record of that, and now we can't prove negligence. The way that you prove negligence with a medical physician or a hospital institution or a healthcare facility is by having proper and adequate records. So what I learned during my journey was that my medical records had been changed. And I knew this because I had gone to 3 different locations to obtain my medical records. And when I sat down and I began comparing each set that I had, certain words had been removed. Certain words had been altered and changed. You have to know something. And let me be the first to tell you if you've never heard of this. Hospitals lie. Healthcare institutions lie. Your doctors lie. We are all people. We are all of the human race. No one is perfect, including your doctor. So this notion that physicians and healthcare institutions are like Jesus and they can do no wrong and everything that they do is in our best interest, that is an absolute farce. They are running a business no different than your local CVS pharmacy, no different than your current employer that provides you with healthcare insurance or healthcare benefits. They are a business. And I want to share another statistic with you if you're not familiar with this. Doctors get paid more money when you have a C-section versus a vaginal birth. So we have seen a massive rise in the African American community when it comes to C-sections. And do not believe all the time it's because you need a C-section. You have to be thinking that this is a business and that they're going to make more money if they cut your stomach open. I want to share another story with you. This one has received a lot of media attention. Her story happened about 2 or 3 miles from my hospital, also here in Los Angeles, California, where I reside. And she went in for a routine birth and a C-section. And they found that they had cut her too deep, and her husband were begging for help. They were also ignored, just like me, and she winded up passing away. She was young, vivacious. This was her second child, just like with me, 38, 39 years old, and is gone. If you don't believe that it can happen, it can happen. And I can tell you right now, the only reason why I'm still here is because my best friend happened to be a physician, ironically. You know, I'm a lawyer, she's a physician, and I'm complaining to her about all of my symptoms. And she says to me, okay, you need to go back to your doctor and ask your doctor these questions because something is off. The type of pain that you're complaining of is very, 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 very serious. And I'm going from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor. And no doctor would order an MRI. I asked for an MRI. I was told, oh, we don't need to do that. It's no big deal. This will pass at some point. No CT scans, no ultrasounds. They would not even draw blood work. And when I began going through this process of my legal suit and I began speaking with different experts, what I was learning is, well, had they drawn your blood, it would have revealed their mistake because it would have shown your cell count, it would have shown your platelet levels, all of that. And it would have also shown that you had hemorrhaged and that you needed a blood transfusion. I had lost so much blood. The skin color on my face had changed. I was having tingling sensations in my feet, in my legs. It was almost like I was, stage 4 diabetic and was getting ready to pass away. That's how bad it was. So when I say, when you walk in, no matter what your education is, there are preconceived notions that are being made about you. And you have to know that and you have to believe that. And you can't be arrogant enough to think that just because you're as educated as they are, that this can't happen to you. I have been in partnership with other physicians, Black physicians, Hispanic physicians, Native American physicians, who have said to me, when I went in to give birth at the hospital that I worked at, they mistreated me. It was like they forgot that I was their colleague. They forgot that I was medically trained too. So something is happening The moment that we lay down in that bed and we become a patient, they become in charge of us because we're hooked up to machines, that we are somehow being viewed just as a person of color. And the data is there to support that. So my biggest takeaway for you is this: recognize that doctors make mistakes and that they are running a business. Number two, make sure that you have your medical records on hand at all times. If you are taking care of someone like your mother or your father who's in ill health, make sure that you have up-to-date medical records for them, because in the event that something happens, that is your Bible, that is your constitution, that is your evidence to prove that something happened that should not have happened. That is how you get to a medical malpractice lawsuit. The next thing that I want to leave you with is making sure that you share your pain points with your local congressional leader, your local alderman, your local city council, because those are the people that are going to Capitol Hill and lobbying and legislating on your behalf. And if they don't know that we're having these issues, they can't make laws around them to support us. I would also like to add that it's important for you to locate your state U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, because each state has different statistics on the disparities that are producing these morbidity and mortality outcomes. So California, for instance, our statistics are actually worse than the Center for Disease Control. And I have a couple of theories on why that's the case. Number one, we in California, we are 6 times more likely to die or be injured in childbirth than any other race. That's coming from our U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, but is based in California. I think a large part of why that's happening here is because we have a significant amount of Native American Indian reservations here in California. For instance, when you're driving to Palm Springs or you're driving from California to Arizona, you will see different reservations off of the highway. And a lot of times, most often, you don't hear about any of those deaths because they have their own government. And our government doesn't have to report what's happening on their reservation. We don't own that land. So that is a large part of why those statistics, in my opinion, are so high. Also, we do have communities, especially in Los Angeles, where your Black and Brown communities do have inadequate access to good health care, and we don't always have the best resources. I know that that's true. However, how do you explain me? How do you explain someone that on paper looked like someone that should have never experienced what I experienced? The only thing that's present or the only thing that's different is the color of my skin or the texture of my hair. So we really have to be honest with ourselves and recognize that something is happening in our community and that there are things that we can do collectively to make sure that this doesn't happen to our children, our grandchildren, our sisters, our daughters, our nieces, whomever. And I would also encourage you to do a Google search once we disconnect here or sometime over the weekend, and also look for nonprofit organizations within your local community. There are tons of them that are behind maternal health care for Black and Brown women. And the reason is our Vice President, Kamala Harris, has made this an agenda item for herself and for the Biden administration. They have had several panels regarding this topic. There are various senators that are heavily involved in this topic. One of them is the Mama's Caucus that spends a significant amount of time addressing or attempting to address the disparities in our communities as it pertains to maternal health care. And again, as you alluded to, Sandra, it's not just maternal health care. It's Black and Brown health care as a whole, our mental health, our physical health, our entire wellness and being. Because if we're dying in alarming rates giving birth, we're also dying in alarming rates in breast cancer. We have the highest, who has the highest statistics for breast cancer in the United States? You guessed it, African American women. And the crazy thing about that is we have the lowest instance of actually getting breast cancer. So what does that tell you? How is it that we're dying the most, but we're the least likely to get it? Again, these disparities are not happening because we live in low income neighborhoods or because we get a WIC card or because we're on Medicaid or because we live in an impoverished area or because we live in a rural community. It's happening because of the color of our skin. Now, I know for a lot of people, it's hard to hear that. especially if you are a nurse, a doctor, or a healthcare worker, and you're hearing someone say, hey, guess what? When I show up in your office, you're racist. Nobody wants to admit that they're racist. Nobody does. Nobody wants to admit that they have preconceived notions about people. No one wants to admit that they're biased. But the reality of the situation is this: it's happening. It's true. And we need to take ownership for it. And the only way that it's going to change is by taking ownership of it. When I look at the many times prior to our proposition here in California, when I was living here in the early 2005, 2006, 2007, and the LGBTQ community was trying to get marriage, to legalize marriage for the LGBT community in California. There were all of these different propositions going on. And I recall having many conversations with colleagues of mine that are members of the LGBTQ, friends of mine that I worked with. And very often what they would say to me is, we don't feel seen. And as long as I'm not hurting someone, how or why would this particular individual, be concerned? And then you have on the other side of the fence, well, we're not mistreating them. We don't mean any harm. We just don't agree with, two people of the same sex actually getting married. The reality in that situation for me was, if they're experiencing it and they're saying that this is their reality, we do have to take ownership at some level, for that, because they're not, or they hadn't been allowed to get married. So if someone got sick or someone got hurt, their partner or the person that they had been in a relationship with have no legal opinion or legal say in what would happen with that person's estate or with that person's medical determinations. The same thing applies when you look at what's happening, in the maternal healthcare space in regards to our ability or inability to make choices, about our healthcare. So Sandra, I'm going to turn it back over to you to see if, anyone has any particular, questions for me at this time, because I could go on all day, talking about this.
And you know what? And I know you can, right? And that's because you have a passion for it. I mean, this is like I said earlier. This is like me. When people ask me, "Well, Sandra, why do you have this passion that draws you? What makes you so passionate about making sure patients are educated, empowered, and engaged?" And as I often say, look, I'm a patient myself. I lost my two oldest sisters. One of them actually got gaslighted out of her life. Pretty much. She got sick and she was a upper echelon professional and she got sick. She was going to the wrong doctor. He was giving her the wrong things. Nobody else would touch her. When I finally finished fighting with the executive medical director at the insurance company she had, because they were basing her care off of what they saw on the internet. You can't base anybody's care off of what you read on the internet. The internet is good, but when it comes down to somebody's health and somebody's life, why are you using the internet as a guide? She had a rare heart condition, right? They finally approved it. She died on the operating table. After all that fight, she died on the operating table. I had my other sister that passed away. She went to the doctor because she felt a lump under her arm. They told her she was just going through menopause and sent her home. Well, 4 years later, she passed away. Not only did she pass away from breast cancer, but she also had ovarian cancer because the cancer spread. But what would have happened if and once again, she was a professional woman. What would have happened if, she came in there of a different color? What would have happened if they removed all that falsehood that was going around and treated her as an individual person? So why wouldn't I have a passion for it? Why wouldn't I have a heart for the things that I do? The stories that your story, we talked about your story when we first connected, right? And this is how good God is. For all of you who don't believe in God, I'm going to tell you this right now. I do. You might believe in any spiritual entity that you want to. I believe in God. And I believe that God shows up. And when he shows up, he shows out. Same thing for your entity. When they show up, they show out. We got introduced through, me researching and seeing what other organizations, just like Bianca said when she was talking. Take a look at Google. See who's out there. See what other African American organizations are out there wherever you live. Sometimes you don't even have to live in the same state. The internet has made it so you can live in whatever state you want to live in, and they need work or they need help. Volunteer to help them. In helping them, you're helping yourself. So when me and Bianca met, it was because I went searching to see who else was out there that could use the services that C.H.L.M.S Medi-Helpz was designed, the mission that we had behind us. And she actually happened to respond, and we connected. We connected like we had known each other all our lives.
We did. We did. I want to piggyback off of what you just said, Sandra, because I forgot to mention in all my talking. So I do have a nonprofit as well. And the name of my nonprofit is called Fighting Our Injustices for Women of Color. You can find us at www.fightingourinjustices.com. You can email us at info@fightingourinjustices.com. And we do regular outreach in our community. We collaborate with other nonprofits. We're regularly in communication with individuals on Capitol Hill, making sure that our concerns are heard. We're working on policy and change. And the change, as you just mentioned, Sandra, it really does start with us. I was shocked once I, started my own nonprofit, how many other nonprofits are actually out there that do similar work or the type of work where we could be in partnership. So for example, there are nonprofits out there that will give you a breast pump. There are young moms out there that have not fully gotten the support that they need that could utilize a breast pump. A breast pump nowadays is going to cost you about $400. And they're expensive. So when I began hearing, there are resources out there, free resources on our website for Fighting Our Injustices, you will find free doulas. It's a website link, as well as free midwives. To have a doula in the room with you is so critical and so important because they're independent of the hospital. And we've all been on payroll before, with some sort of company or some sort of entity. And what we have to remember is if you're on payroll for a company or an entity, whether you realize it or not, you want to protect your company or your entity. So doctors and nurses work for entities, and those entities are hospitals, and that's who pays their salary. So that is their means to, looking out for their family and protecting their family, right? So why would a doctor or nurse, and I'm gonna say the ugly truth here, very often, doctors and nurses see things that happen in the hospital that constitute medical negligence, which equals a lawsuit, right? But they turn a blind eye or they pretend that they didn't see it because they're concerned about their job. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to be fired from their job. But that now means that you're a part of the problem because you're seeing what's happening, but you're not doing anything about it. Now, when I voice this, I've had people say, well, Bianca, you're going up against a machine. You're not going to win. Even if I do speak out about it, it is just little on me. And I'll tell you this, I can understand that viewpoint, as well. So I come from a law enforcement family background, several people in my family on the federal level, state level, local municipalities. I am very intimately acquainted with that world. And when we all witnessed George Floyd being murdered a few years ago during the COVID pandemic, and we began to hear about all of these different stories where African American men are being murdered during a basic, traffic stop over something that could have easily been rectified. I began to get questions from people because of my family's background in law enforcement. Well, Bianca, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts on it? Who do you think is really to blame? And I remember having a conversation, with my father, who spent 45 years in law enforcement in a variety of capacities. And he said to me, Bianca, the reality when you're in law enforcement is you are a officer first. Mm-hmm. You're a federal agent first. You're an FBI agent first. You're a cop first. You're a sheriff first. You're a detective first. You are not Black first. You're not white first. You're not Asian first. You're not Hispanic first. First, you are in uniform. Once we come out of uniform and we're all in the locker together, then race can separate and divide and things of that nature. The same thing goes for doctors and nurses. Okay. And I want to remind you all that my best friend is a physician. And in no way do I think that all physicians do this behavior, but I just want to let you in on a little secret. Doctors and nurses are doctors and nurses first. They look out for each other just like cops, just like teachers, just like politicians. Again, they're not Jesus. And I can't tell you how many times I've spoken with individuals where they say, I couldn't believe that my doctor did that. Or when I pulled my records, he had left out so many different things. I really trusted him or her. And it's unfortunate, but again, they're running a business and they're incentivized to keep things quiet. They're incentivized to keep things hush and a secret because they're protecting who they work for. So having a doula or a midwife in my opinion, is really essential to having a safe pregnancy and a safe delivery because they're an independent party. They're not employed by the hospital and you can get them for free. So if you're looking for a free doula or a free midwife, you can go to my website and find that information, or you can Google it yourself. But make sure that you're aware of what resources are out there. Find out the website for your local medical board, because if you do see something or hear something that doesn't sit well with you, you can report it anonymously. So I recognize everybody doesn't want to go screaming down the street, so-and-so did this to me. Everybody is concerned about their reputation or receiving backlash, from the community. You can do these things anonymously without, sharing, who you are and things of that nature. So I just want everyone to know it's so important to be informed and aware and knowing what your resources are so that when you get in these situations, you know what to do. And my hope is you don't get yourself into these situations because you've had these conversations like we're having today and you're already ahead of it.
And that is so true. And, which leads to the point of this. We're not going anywhere. C.H.L.M.S Medi-Helpz is here to help. We're here to collaborate. Competition doesn't even come into play. As a matter of fact, when I hear someone say compete, I walk away. If each one of us that are in the field of healthcare was to take 500 patients, there would still be 1 million others that needed help. So there's no reason to compete. We should all be coming together, especially in the Black African American community. And this is not just in America. This issue happens on a global basis. So it's not just in America, but we need to be coming together and banding together and bringing our resources together so that we can win, right? One person speaking up ain't gonna make a difference. But if there's power in numbers. The more power we have, the more numbers we have, the more power we have. We, once again, cannot keep sitting back waiting for people to help us. We can't keep sitting back and say, well, I didn't know, because now you know. Now you know that there are resources out there that can help you. Whether no matter what your social economic situation is, just like Bianca just said, and just like I said, my sisters both professionals lost their lives way too young because of a medical issue. Just like Bianca said, she's now having women, doctors, attorneys, scientists, everyone is coming to her now. And they're saying something. And as I told her when we initially spoke, but they shouldn't have had to wait, right? We need to stop hiding behind our titles. Our titles are just that, they're titles. If we're hurting as a human, we need to start speaking up, banding together and speaking up. If you don't feel comfortable speaking by yourself, go on Dr. Google and look up what organizations are out there that are cover the same issues that you have so that you can get the help you need and so that you can get a larger group that understands what you're going through because they're going through the same thing. Bianca, I do want to ask you a question. In doing some research on the maternal health issue, I came across some information that was talking about the MOMS Act. Is the MOMS Act, can you explain the MOMS Act, and can you tell us if the MOMS Act, is that actually legislation now, or is it still something that's actually being weighed in as far as becoming a bill?
Sure. So the act that I believe that you're talking about is called Momnibus.
Right.
And so our governor here in California, Governor Newsom, He signed the legislation for our state, but it is also happening on the federal level. And there are several members of Congress that are part of that particular act. It is legislation that has been passed. However, and here's the but, they still need funding to do all of the things that now have been approved by the government. So getting the legislators and getting our government and Congress and senators, to say, okay, we now recognize this as a problem in Black and brown communities. We now need to pass legislation for it. And some of that legislation entails, for instance, anytime an African American woman dies during childbirth, the hospital will automatically have to notify the government. Okay, that's a lot of pressure for a doctor, because now a doctor's going to know that if I lose a patient, that person's records are coming out, they're going to investigate this, and I can't do something wrong. So just that alone puts a little bit more pressure on doctors to operate with a greater level of care. What the data is showing us is that when we show up with our Black and brown skin, that the level of care, whether intentional or not, goes down. The level of care goes down, right? So Momnibus has a variety of pillars in it, and a lot of those pillars involve funding. So now that we've gotten a lot of this legislation passed to sort of help these Black and brown communities, we still need the funding, which is where all of the nonprofit organizations come into play, which is why voting in every election in your community comes into play. You have to vote, even in your local community. You cannot just vote for the presidential election. And I'm going to tell you why really quick, because I know I've got about 7 minutes left here. I want to hit you with this.
Take your time. Do not rush.
I want to hit you with this. So legally, there were things that happened in all of my hearings in front of judges. There were things that happened during my trial that were complete violations of civil code, as well as the law on the books, changing different rules to make things more favorable for the defense, all of that, right? What that means, though, is this. If I have an issue with how a judge handled my case, or how a judge may have favored another party, a lot of people don't realize judges are an elected position. You get to vote on whether or not a judge should stay on the bench. You get to vote whether or not a police sheriff can stay as the police sheriff. You get to vote on who your attorney general is. All of these are elected offices. I often find that people just think of your president and your vice president or your mayor. No, a lot of the things that determine what happens to us in our local communities are things that we have the power to vote on. And we have to encourage ourselves. And the reason why we have to encourage ourselves, you hit it, Sandra, nobody is going to help us. And if there's anything that I can tell you that I have lived for the last 9 years of this legal battle and this medical battle is, nobody is giving you anything. Nobody is helping you. You have to help yourself. And then a lot of people say, well, how do I help myself? I have no resources. Open your mouth. We have YouTube, we have LinkedIn, we have TikTok, we have Instagram. I can go live right now and say anything to the entire world. That is the difference between 2024 and 1944. That is the difference. I want everyone to think for a second. The civil rights movement was booming and banging from about 1963 to 1970. Can you imagine when the Black Panther Party was at its highest, when John F. Kennedy Jr. was still in presidency before he was assassinated, before Martin Luther King was assassinated, and before Malcolm X was assassinated, had all of them had access to TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of these different platforms, how we would have not only galvanized the United States, but how we would have galvanized the entire world. We do have a voice. George Floyd's voice was in that iPhone camera. That we do have a voice. We're not realizing how much power, though, we actually have. So I am here to encourage you. I don't care if you make $8 an hour, $18 an hour, $80,000 a year, or if you bring in $800,000 a year. This has nothing to do with class. This has nothing to do with anything related to that, or how much education you have. You could have a GED and bring about change. Period. One last point. I was watching the award show circuit. This is award season, February, March, April. All of the awards are happening, the Grammys, American Music Awards, the Oscars. And I was watching the Emmys, and I saw Niecy Nash get up and give her speech for winning for the Jeffrey Dahmer series that she did. And when she got up to that mic, she inspired me, and she inspired so many Black and brown women. And that's what she said she was trying to reach in her speech. And what she said was, after she thanked a few people, she said, and I also want to thank myself. I want to thank myself. And everybody started laughing. She's thanking herself. Yeah, she said, I'm going to thank myself because you did that. Go on with your bad self. So if we don't encourage ourselves, and we don't thank ourselves, and we don't speak up for ourselves, no one else is. We will continue to be George Floyd. And the only thing that happened between George Floyd and what has been happening for eons and eons and eons in our judicial system and our criminal justice system is that there was a camera on that day. But they had been doing that for years. There was just no camera. So the same way police officers now have to have a camera, doctors should have cameras, nurses should have cameras. They are the same people. There's no different. Do you know that members of the KKK served as physicians? I want you to think about that as we wrap, Sandra, that members of the Ku Klux Klan are nurses and physicians. Even today, members of the Proud Boys who stormed the US Capitol are doctors and physicians and professors and lawyers. That is what you have to be routinely saying to yourself so that you keep yourself in check, that when you go into the doctor's office, they are running a business, and their business makes them give you health care, not their heart. Thank you, Sandra, for the platform.
No, thank you, because what you just said at the end, and I'm going to read a few comments that we did get, as well as, once again, if you would like a copy of this link because you want to share it, that's the point. We want you to share it. But what you just said brought home a real valid point. It's one that I repeatedly have to tell everybody. You're as a patient or as a caregiver, anyone in that internal patients network or external patients network, you have a tool that's the best tool you could possibly have, right? That's your voice. Use your voice. If you don't know how to use your voice, contact me. I will surely show you how to use your voice, whether it's in writing or whether it's in word. I will show you how to use your voice. Because without your voice, we're all lost. Without your voice, you're never gonna get what you're supposed to have, which once again is not that better health outcomes, is the best health outcomes. You don't use your voice, you'll never get it. It's not gonna come. And it's just that simple. That's why I said at day 1, and I will continue to say through day 29, what we're doing here, what C.H.L.M.S has embarked on during this month is hard. Yes, it's hard because pretty much I'm doing a lot of this leg work myself. I would do it over again because we shouldn't even have to wait this long to get to this point where we got social media and everybody has a month. We have the shortest month in America. We do, because other countries have Black History Months. They have longer days. We have months. And people ask me, like, you going to use all 29 days? I most certainly am. And if they give me 31, I'm going to put 31 Black people on stage to talk to our community, because we need to know what we need to know. And we don't trust other people more so than we trust ourselves or those that look like us. So, yeah, if I had 31 days, I'm tired, but guess what? I would do it over and over and over again until I could reach that certain amount of people so that I could see a difference. If I could touch one person per night in everything I do, I've reached my goal of empowering and educating and engaging a patient during their healthcare journey. But you certainly brought it home. I'm with you. Use your voice. Use your voice. Our ancestors right now are dancing wherever they are. Like, oh, they finally got the message. they turn it over with glee and joy and everything else because they see Yes, we are here to make a difference, and we're making a difference. I have to say, and if I didn't say greetings to you, if you're watching this and you're in live with us today, it's because I'm not seeing your name, but I am going to go first to Facebook. And if you want to, and you have the time, if you're on your laptop or you're on your phone and you're looking at us live, it's going to be better if you do it on your laptop. So I don't know if you have time to do that or not, but always send us a comment afterwards. We'll make sure that Bianca gets the comment. We'll make sure that she actually reads the comment, and that if she doesn't respond to you directly because her schedule is so busy, she'll say, hey, Sandra, can you send this out to whoever it is so that they can get the information? If you're looking and you at whatever point and you have a nonprofit, reach out to me or reach out to Bianca and say, hey, I would love to be on your website. These are my services. I would love to be on your website. Let her know so that she can add it, so that you're not sitting there trying to struggle and like, where do I get the patients from? How do I find them? How does anybody know that I'm out here? She's offering you her website. She's
Really quick, Sandra, can I interrupt? I just want to give the spelling of Momnibus, because it's a hard one to figure out how to spell. And if you just research Momnibus, it will give you other resources, other tools that can help you. So it's M as in Mary, O as in Omega, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, I as in ice, B as in ball, U as in umbrella, S as in Sam, Momnibus. And that is the legislation that has been passed by Congress to rectify some of these disparities. But at the end of the day, they still need funding, and we haven't gotten the proper funding that we need to facilitate all of the things that have been passed.
And just very quick on the Momnibus Act, I live in Illinois. I live in Chicago. I live in Illinois. I know that Illinois is supporting and has signed off on the Momnibus. So I know that they support what's the act, they support what's going on. And as Bianca was saying about the states that you might live in, check. See if what your legislators have signed off on. If they for or against it. That will show you when you go to vote who it is that you should be when you're voting. You should be voting for those people who believe like you believe in the things that you believe in. I am going to end this, but before I do want to say Bridget Scarborough is watching from Facebook. She says this is extremely helpful. Thank you so much. We have Yadi Shari. I'm pretty sure I'm messing up his name, so I'm just going to call him Yadi out of love. He's saying hi. Curtis Andrews is saying great topics, blessed evening. And Cherie Reed is talking about something that you and I talked about. So if you could briefly cover this, it would be beautiful. She's saying this story is heartbreaking. I remember reading Serena Williams' story and her experience. And that's something that you and I have talked about, touched upon, was the experience that Serena Williams, a multi-millionaire, went through.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really sad, because a lot of celebrities have come out and said, my experience was horrible, and I was famous, I was wealthy. There was no reason that I should have been having the experience that I had. I know that Serena Williams had billboards here in Los Angeles for a while saying maternal health is real. Black maternal health needs help. And I heard some of the things that she said in different interviews. And the one that stuck with me the most was, she said, I was having so much pain in my leg, I felt that I had a blood clot. And I kept telling them, please check my leg, please check my leg. Oh, you're fine. Ignore, ignore, ignore. And it wasn't until her Caucasian husband showed up in her delivery room when she finally got the proper attention that she knew that she deserved. And lo and behold, they did in fact find a blood clot, in her leg. And that's what I mean when I say, whether intentional or not, something happens in the room that the care that we receive as Black and brown people goes down in all systemic institutions. Okay. Whether it's criminal, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, when you start looking at, okay, who has the best grades, at a particular school, and why is that, or how deep is this, problem, actually, rooted. And again, I'll say this as my disclaimer. This is not to say that every doctor is bad. This is not to say that every doctor is racist. What this is to say, though, is you need to engage with your doctor like they're running a business, not like they're a Santa Claus and they're there to be sweet and nice to you and take care of all of your woes. They are running a business, and you owe it to yourself to make sure that you are prepared in the event that anything goes wrong. And that starts with your medical records. Get your medical records. You are legally allowed to receive a copy of your medical records under HIPAA, HIPAA. That's my last little selling point.
And you know what? And once again, if you're not sure how to get your medical records, or if you're like, okay, well, is this my medical record? What I have? Reach out. C.H.L.M.S is here. C.H.L.M.S Medi-Helpz Foundation. Please go to our website. Send me an email. Send us an email. Say, hey, I asked for my medical records. They told me I couldn't have them. Whatever you have to do. And don't just get one medical record and say, well, I got the medical record like 5 years ago. Get your medical records. You can do this yourself by going on your portal. However, I do want to put a disclaimer out there. If you're not sure how to read your patient portal, we will actually, this is a disclaimer, but it's also a plug for something we have coming up. We actually are rolling out a digitally empowered series. We'll be working through the Patient Empowerment Network. We will be rolling out a digitally empowered segment, or sessions, I should say, where we're teaching patients how to use the computer, your phone, your tablets, whatever, to get whatever information you need to get. But this is the disclaimer. You need to check with your healthcare system to make sure, or your doctor, to make sure that they do not charge you for your use of your patient portal. Because that's what's going on now, is that there are a number of hospitals and doctors that are charging patients as if they was going to an office visit, charging patients to get those records. What does that mean? That means you as a patient, when you go to that doctor's office, you need to be asking for those records. You need to be going back to ask for those notes. There's a way that you can do this where you're not being charged for anything. But do ask, because I would hate for you to start signing on to your patient portal thinking you're using it, and then you get a bill for $25, $50, whatever they're charging you, you get a bill for it. Ask questions. Say, before I use this portal, is there a charge? If you don't have the money for it, say, how can I get my records since I don't have the money to pay for it? Let it be known who's charging for this so that this can go up. We can start raising our voice on, okay, well, why is XYZ charging for medical records? But it's a known fact that the facilities and doctors alike, medical groups alike, are charging patients to use those portals. Not all of them, but some of them. And I'm sure that it's going to be on the rise as they see patients going in and asking for medical records, medical notes. So just be careful, but always know that you have C.H.L.M.S Medi-Helpz Foundation that you can reach out to. Once again, I'm available on social media. I will have someone, if I can't do it, someone from our team will be actually able to help you in whatever way you need. So with that being said, Bianca, I'm going to give you back your night.
Thank you, Sandra. It was a pleasure to speak to your audience today. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to use this platform to help our people.
Yes.
So I appreciate everyone's time, and I hope everyone has a great Friday night and a great weekend. Oh, and watch the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Welcome. Bye.